Here's the paradox of life. You can work harder than anyone you know, give every ounce of strength, and still struggle. Or you can learn how to think, how to aim, how to discipline your mind, and life will reward you beyond measure. Hard work has its place, but without direction, it becomes nothing more than busy work. In this message, I'm going to show you why hard work alone will never make you rich, and what will. You'll learn the real causes of wealth, the principles that explain why some men prosper while others struggle, even though both may work equally hard. By the end of this lesson, you'll understand the difference between labor and leverage, between effort and direction, between activity and achievement. And more importantly, you'll have the practical steps to begin applying these principles in your own life. This isn't theory, it's law. And once you see it clearly, you will never waste another hour confusing motion with progress. Most people live under the heavy burden of a lie they were taught as children. If you work hard, you'll succeed. They've seen their fathers toil, their mothers labor, their neighbors sweat, and yet they've also seen that these men and women rarely escape struggle. They wonder why. They assume life is unfair, or that luck alone separates the wealthy from the poor. But neither is true. The truth is that wealth is never created by labor alone. It is created by ideas, by imagination, by discipline, by service. The man who digs ditches may work himself to the bone and remain poor, while the man who directs his thought may work fewer hours and grow rich. That is not injustice, it is law. And once you understand the law, you can use it, just as anyone else can. In the time we have together, I'm going to show you why hard work without direction is never enough, and what disciplines turn effort into achievement. We'll begin with the great paradox of labor, why those who work the hardest with their muscles often gain the least with their lives. Then we'll uncover the real sources of wealth: disciplined thought, clear goals, right use of time, continuous learning, persistence, and above all, service to others. Along the way, I'll share stories and examples that reveal the difference between those who toil endlessly and those who prosper abundantly. And before we're done, I'll give you a challenge, a simple test you can take in your own life that will prove beyond doubt that riches are not reserved for the lucky, but for the disciplined. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may overturn everything you've been taught about success, but if you'll listen and apply it, it can change your life forever. Now, here's something most people completely miss, though it explains so much of the struggle in the world. Effort alone will never make you rich. You can rise before the sun. You can work until your body aches and your clothes are drenched in sweat. You can labor day after day, year after year, and still end up with little more than a meager living and worn-out strength. If hard work by itself were the key to wealth, then the men who toil in the fields, the laborers who bend their backs in factories, the men and women who grind out endless hours of exhausting labor would be the wealthiest among us. But they are not. They are often the poorest. They give more sweat than anyone else, yet they remain chained to scarcity. And the reason is clear. Hard work without direction, without thought, without discipline, is nothing more than busy work. Think about the mule. He works harder than a man ever could. He pulls, he carries, he strains every muscle, yet he owns nothing. He sweats from morning to night, but he gains no riches, no freedom, no reward beyond food and shelter, and many men live their lives the same way. They confuse motion with progress, labor with success, effort with wealth. But the truth is, the back's mule proves the error. For wealth doesn't flow from how much you sweat. It flows from how much you think, how clearly you direct, how wisely you use the effort you give. Now let me set the stakes for you. If you fail to understand this distinction, you may spend your whole life laboring and never get ahead. You'll wake one day after 40 years of toil and realize you're still where you began, only older and more tired. And that is one of life's greatest tragedies, to confuse mere activity with real achievement, to pour out energy without ever stopping to ask whether it's being directed toward a worthy end. But once you see this truth, once you grasp that effort must be combined with purpose, discipline, and thought, then you begin to rise above the 95% who stay poor despite all their labor. Here's how you put this lesson to work. Stop asking, how hard am I working, and start asking, where is my work taking me? Stop measuring yourself by hours spent and start measuring by value created. The ditch digger may sweat until his body is broken, but the man who designs the machine to dig ditches will earn the wealth. Why? Because his effort was directed by thought. The mule works hard. The man works wisely. That is the difference. So let me ask you directly, are you living like the mule, straining harder each day yet getting nowhere? Or are you directing your work with thought, with imagination, with discipline, so that each hour builds toward something greater? The answer will determine not only your wealth, but the very quality of your life. For in the end, it is not effort that enriches you, it is disciplined effort, guided by thought, aimed at purpose. Anything less will leave you tired, but never truly rich. Here's the part that most people never stop to consider. There is a world of difference between labor and leverage. Labor is the physical exertion of energy. It's the sweat of the brow, the aching of the muscles, the pushing of the body against resistance. And labor has its place. Nothing is accomplished without effort of some kind. But labor by itself is limited. There are only so many hours in the day, only so much strength in the body, only so much endurance a man can give. Labor ends when energy runs out. But leverage is when the mind multiplies effort, when an idea takes the place of 10,000 blows, when imagination turns a day's work into a lifetime's fortune. That is the dividing line between those who work hard and remain poor, and those who think clearly and become rich. Think of it this way. One man spends his days digging ditches with a shovel. He bends his back, he strains every muscle, he works until sweat pours down his face. At the end of the day he has dug perhaps a few dozen yards, and he has earned a modest wage. Another man, in that same day, sits at a table with a pencil and paper. He sketches out a design for a machine that digs ditches 10 times faster, with less effort. That man may not have sweated at all. But when his design is built, it multiplies effort 1,000-fold. He earns not for the labor of his back, but for the leverage of his mind. Which one do you suppose grows rich? The answer is obvious. The farmer provides another example. One tills the soil with bare hands or simple tools, struggling against weeds and weather, hoping the earth will yield enough to feed his family. Another studies, experiments, applies new methods, develops machinery, and learns to harness science to multiply his yield. Both are farmers, both labor. But one remains poor while the other prospers. Not because one worked harder, but because one worked with leverage. Now let's make this practical. If all you bring to the marketplace is your back, your sweat, your raw effort, you will be paid only for what your body can give. And that payment will always be limited, because your body is limited. But if you bring your mind, if you bring ideas, when you bring imagination and discipline, you open the door to leverage. You create systems, processes, inventions, improvements, services that multiply your effort and serve more people. And the more people you serve, the greater your reward. That is the way wealth is created, not by effort alone, but by effort multiplied through thought. So ask yourself this question: am I trading hours for wages, or am I multiplying my hours with leverage? Am I pouring out effort with no thought of how to multiply its value? Or am I disciplining my mind to look for ways to work smarter, to create more value with less effort? That single shift from labor to leverage is what lifts a man out of poverty and places him on the path to wealth. This is why hard work alone will never make you rich. Labor has limits, leverage has none. The mule works until it drops, and it owns nothing. The man who uses his mind can sit beneath a tree, think of a new way, and change the world. That is the power of leverage. That is the difference. Now, let me share with you what truly separates the few who prosper from the many who struggle. It isn't muscle, it isn't hours, it isn't luck, it is ideas. Riches flow from imagination, not from sweat alone. An idea is invisible, weightless, without shape or form, yet it can move the world. A single idea, held in the mind of a determined man, has built cities, toppled empires, created industries, and lifted entire families out of poverty. And here's the paradox: ideas are free. They are available to anyone who will think. Yet because they require effort of a different kind, the quiet, disciplined effort of the mind, most people ignore them. They would rather wear out their backs than stretch their imagination. They prefer visible effort to invisible thought, and so they remain poor. But the men who take the time to think, who discipline themselves to generate and refine ideas, discover that one good idea is worth more than 10,000 hours of sweat. Consider Thomas Edison. He was not a man of great physical strength. He did not outwork others by sheer muscle. What he did was think. He thought, he experimented, he persisted, until he discovered the principle that would give the world electric light. And with that idea, he changed not only his own fortunes, but the lives of millions. Was it hard work? Of course. But it was not muscle-bound labor that made Edison rich. It was the idea, the application of imagination to effort, that created his wealth and transformed the world. Or, take Henry Ford. He didn't become wealthy by working longer hours in a machine shop than anyone else. He became wealthy because he had an idea, to build a car so affordable that the average family could own one. That idea, multiplied by persistence and discipline, revolutionized transportation, created an industry, and made him one of the wealthiest men of his time. The difference was not how hard he worked. Thousands of men worked just as hard in factories all over the country. The difference was the idea. Now, what does this mean for you? It means that wealth is not waiting in your muscles, it is waiting in your mind. The man who disciplines himself to think creatively, to seek ideas, to notice problems and imagine solutions, is the man who gains leverage over life. He can take the same 24 hours everyone else has and produce results 10, 100, 1,000 times greater. This is the law of ideas. And it is available to anyone willing to use it. So how do you begin? Start by giving your mind time and space to think. Carry a small notebook and write down every idea that comes to you, no matter how small, no matter how rough. Most of them may be useless, but a few will be worth more than gold, and the discipline of capturing them will sharpen your mind to notice more. Ask yourself questions. How could this be improved? How could I serve more people? How could this be done faster, easier, better? Each question plants a seed, and given time, one of those seeds may grow into an idea that changes everything. Remember Emerson's words, "A man is what he thinks about all day long." If you spend your days thinking only of toil, of worry, of complaint, then toil, worry, and complaint will fill your life. But if you discipline yourself to think of progress, of opportunity, of service, then those things will find their way to you. An idea is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. And one good idea, acted upon, can do more for you than a lifetime of blind labor. So let me ask you, what ideas are you cultivating? What thoughts are you giving your energy to? For if you ignore this discipline, you will stay stuck in labor. But if you embrace it, if you begin to think, to imagine, to create, then your mind will become your greatest asset, and wealth will follow as surely as the harvest follows the seed. Now, here's a truth that overturns much of what people have been taught about money. You are not paid for the hours you work, you are paid for the value you bring. That is the difference that explains why two men can both labor for 8 hours a day, and one remains poor while the other grows wealthy. Life does not reward effort for its own sake, it rewards value. And value is created through service. The man who serves one person earns a living. The man who serves 1,000 earns a fortune. The man who serves millions changes the world. The scale of your income is determined by the scale of your service. Think of the stove. A fire will give you heat, but not until you first put in the wood. You cannot sit in front of an empty stove, shivering and demanding warmth, and expect it to oblige you. Yet that is how most men live. They demand pay before they have given service. They demand recognition before they have rendered value. They demand reward before they have made a contribution. And so they are disappointed, again and again, because the law of compensation cannot be cheated. It pays in direct proportion to what you give, and it pays only after you have given it. Consider the businessman who begins with a small store. If he asks, "How much can I take from these customers?" his business will always remain small, for his selfishness will poison every transaction. But if he asks, how much value can I give? How can I serve these people better than anyone else? Then his business will grow, because customers sense his sincerity, trust his service, and return again and again. The first man seeks to get and remains poor. The second seeks to give and becomes wealthy. The difference is not luck, it is service. And here is the wonderful thing: service multiplies. Each time you give more than is expected, each time you treat a customer, a client, a colleague, or a neighbor with extra care, you plant a seed. That seed may not bear fruit immediately, but it always grows. It grows into trust, into reputation, into opportunity, into reward. The man who disciplines himself to live by service finds that life pays him back in ways he never imagined, not only in money, but in respect, in friendship, in satisfaction. Now let me set the stakes. If you neglect this truth, you may labor all your life and never rise above mediocrity. You may work long hours, you may toil faithfully, but if you do not render more service than you are paid for, your pay will always remain small. But if you embrace this truth, if you decide that from this day forward you will always give more than you are asked, always put in more wood than the fire requires, then the law will go to work for you. It may not happen in a day, but in time it will happen with certainty. Life always balances the scales. So ask yourself, how much value am I really giving? Am I serving with excellence, with care, with a genuine desire to contribute? Or am I merely putting in hours, doing only what is required, waiting for reward that never seems to come? That answer will tell you everything about your future. For wealth is not the reward of effort alone. It is the reward of service, and service is always within your control. Remember this: the surest path to wealth is not to chase money but to chase value, not to demand reward but to render service. Give more than you are paid for, and soon you will be paid for more than you give. That is the law. And once you align yourself with it, riches cease to be a mystery. They become the natural harvest of a life devoted to service. Here's something that may strike you as surprising at first, but it is one of the great truths of life. Effort without goals is wasted energy. You can work yourself to the bone, you can spend years straining and sweating, and still find yourself standing in the same place you began, because you never chose where you wanted to go. Goals are what transform labor into progress. They are the compass that gives direction to effort, the chart that turns wandering into a voyage. Without goals, no amount of hard work will make you rich, because you will be moving but not arriving. Think of a ship leaving harbor. If the captain has no destination, no chart, and no course, the finest crew and the strongest engines in the world will not help. That ship may churn the sea, burning fuel, making waves, but it will wander endlessly until it runs aground or is lost. Contrast that with a ship that has a definite port in mind, a clear chart, and a steady course. It may face storms, it may be delayed, it may need to adjust its path, but it will arrive, because it knew where it was going from the start. That's the difference between a man who works hard without goals and a man who works steadily toward a chosen purpose. One drifts, the other progresses. I once knew a lawyer who had worked his way into wealth, position, and recognition. By every outward measure, he was a success. He had the home, the family, the practice he had dreamed of. But when I spoke with him privately, he confessed he was restless, even depressed. He had grown tired of his work, weary of his days. Why? Because he had reached the goals he had set for himself long ago, and he had not set new ones. He was like a ship that had reached port but had forgotten to chart its next voyage. With nothing to aim at, his effort lost meaning. His wealth could not buy him purpose, because purpose is not purchased, it is chosen. This is the tragedy of so many lives. People confuse activity with achievement. They think because they are busy, they are moving forward. But busyness without direction is nothing but drift. It exhausts the body, it drains the spirit, and in the end, it produces little of value. Goals, on the other hand, give every hour meaning. They turn even the smallest task into a step on a greater journey. They lift you out of routine and give you a reason to endure hardship, to persist through difficulty, because you see where the road is leading. So what is the lesson here? That without goals, Hard work is like pouring water into a sieve, endless motion with nothing to show for it. But with goals, every drop of effort gathers into a stream that moves you forward. This is why I say goals matter more than effort. For it is possible to work hard and fail, but it is impossible to work steadily toward a worthy goal and not succeed. Success, as I have said many times, is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. The man who has set such an ideal and moves toward it each day is already a success, no matter how far he has left to travel. The man who has no ideal, no goal, no chart, no direction, is a failure already, no matter how hard he works. So let me ask you, are you working or are you progressing? Are you merely laboring, or are you moving towards something that excites you, something you have deliberately chosen? Your answer will tell you not only where you are, but where you are headed. For the discipline of goals is what separates the many, who sweat for nothing, from the few who labor with purpose and arrive at success. Now that we see why goals matter more than effort, the next question is obvious. What kind of goals should we set? Because not all goals are equal. Some goals, even when reached, leave a man empty. Others, even before they are reached, fill his days with energy and meaning. The difference is simple but profound. A true goal must be a worthy ideal. A worthy ideal is not chosen for its size or for its glitter, but for its worth. It is the kind of aim that draws the best out of you, that stretches you, that serves others as you pursue it. It is worthy not because the world applauds it, but because it reflects your own values, your own vision, your own deliberate choice. Most people never stop long enough to choose such an ideal. They drift into jobs, into routines, into lives that were never truly theirs. They work hard, yes, but they are climbing ladders placed against the wrong walls. They reach the top, look around, and discover it is not where they wanted to be at all. That is the tragedy of unworthy goals. They consume your years, they eat your strength, and in the end, they leave you unsatisfied. But the man who chooses a worthy ideal lives differently. Every day has meaning because it is tied to his chosen direction. Every effort is progress because it leads him closer to something he truly values. Think of the teacher who has chosen to dedicate her life to shaping young minds. She may never grow rich in money, but she is rich in purpose, and her life is a success because she is moving toward a goal she has deliberately chosen. Think of the mother who pours her energy into raising her family with love and integrity. To the world, it may look ordinary, but it is a worthy ideal, and in pursuing it, she is already a success. Think of the small shopkeeper who takes pride in serving his community with honesty. He may not be famous, but his days are filled with purpose because his goal is worthy. Do you see? Success is not measured by size, but by direction. A man who runs a gas station because he drifted into it and has no larger aim may be failing, even if the station makes money. But another man who runs that same station because he has chosen it, because he sees it as a way to serve, to build, to grow, is already a success. Outwardly, they look the same. Inwardly, they are worlds apart. So, how do you set a worthy ideal? Begin by asking yourself, what would I be proud to devote my life to? Not what others expect, not what the world applauds, but what you would choose if no one else's opinion mattered. Then reduce that answer to one clear, simple sentence. Write it down. Carry it with you. Look at it each day. The act of writing makes it definite. The act of carrying keeps it alive. The act of reviewing it plants it deep in your imagination until it becomes a guiding star. And here's the key. Once you have set a worthy ideal, every day becomes meaningful. Even small tasks take on significance because they are tied to something larger. Obstacles become easier to endure because you see them as part of the journey, and when you finally reach that goal, you will not feel empty because it was never about the finish line. It was about the daily progress, the steady movement, the life lived with purpose. So let me ask you, what is your worthy ideal? Have you written it down? Can you state it in one sentence? If not, then you are drifting, no matter how hard you work. But if you can, then you are already on the road to success, for success is nothing more than the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Choose yours wisely, and it will transform your life. Here's something most people never stop to think about, and yet it quietly determines the quality of their lives: the way they use time. Time is the raw material of life. It is the only resource given equally to every man, every woman, every day. The richest man on earth has no more of it than the poorest beggar. Each morning, without fail, life deposits 24 hours into your account and demands that you spend them all before midnight. There is no saving, no storing, no hoarding for later. Once a day is gone, it is gone forever, and that is why wasted time is the surest way to remain poor. Money lost can be earned again. Strength lost can sometimes be regained. But time lost is gone for good, and most people lose it not in great chunks, but little by little, almost without noticing. Think about how the average person spends his day. Hours vanish in idle talk, in trivial distractions, in scrolling through meaningless news or gossip, in tasks that neither enrich nor advance him. He tells himself it's only a few minutes, but those minutes accumulate into hours, the hours into days, the days into years. And then one day he looks back and wonders why he is no further ahead than when he began. He has worked hard, yes. He has labored faithfully. But because so much of his time was wasted, he has little to show for it. Wasted time is the thief that robs men of wealth, of opportunity, of the very chance to live the lives they desire. Now let's make this vivid. Imagine a bank that credited your account with $86,400 every morning, but required you to spend it all before nightfall. Whatever you did not use would vanish. You would spend every dollar wisely, wouldn't you? You would plan, you would prioritize, you would make sure nothing slipped through your fingers. Well, each day life deposits 86,400 seconds into your account. And yet most people throw them away as though they had no value. They guard their wallets, but they squander their hours. They protect their possessions, but they neglect their time. And in the end, it is not the loss of money, but the loss of time that keeps them poor. The stakes, then, are enormous. If you waste your time, no amount of hard work will rescue you. You may labor faithfully for 40 years, but if those years are filled with wasted hours, your effort will always be limited. Your progress always small. But if you discipline yourself to use time wisely, to invest it in thought, in learning, in building, in serving, then each day becomes a step toward wealth and success. Time used wisely compounds. It builds, it multiplies, it transforms. But time wasted decays, it corrodes, it steals. And the man who wastes it discovers too late that he has squandered the very stuff life is made of. So let me ask you, how are you spending your hours? Do you know where your time goes, or do you let it slip away without notice? Do you treat it as treasure, or do you spend it as though it were worthless? The answer will tell you more about your future than any other single thing. For wasted time keeps you poor, used time makes you rich, and the choice is yours, beginning today. Here's a truth that, once understood, will change the way you see every hour of your day. Time compounds. Just as money invested wisely multiplies with interest, so does time invested wisely multiply in results. An hour here or there may not look like much, but when repeated daily, when stacked one upon another, it becomes the difference between mediocrity and mastery, between a life wasted and a life well lived. And yet, because the results are not immediate, because nothing dramatic happens in a single day, most people ignore this law. They waste the hours that could have made them rich, never realizing that each one was a seed with the power to multiply. Think of the man who decides to read for just 1 hour a day. In the first week, it doesn't seem to matter much. After a month, he has finished a single book. After a year, 12 books. After 5 years, 60 books. After 10 years, 120. Do you see what that means? He has given himself the equivalent of a graduate-level education in any subject he chooses, simply by investing 1 hour a day. Now compare him to the man who spends that same hour idly in distractions or trivialities. After 5 years, he is exactly where he was, only older. After 10 years, the gap between the two men is unbridgeable. One has grown into mastery. The other has remained stagnant. That is the compounding of time at work. Or take the farmer as an analogy. He plants seed in the spring, and for weeks the field looks empty. To the untrained eye, it seems like nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, the seed is sprouting, roots are spreading, life is taking hold, and when the season is right, the harvest comes, abundant and undeniable. So it is with the hours you invest. At first, you may see little return, but each hour compounds beneath the surface, building strength, shaping character, expanding knowledge, until one day the results appear, and those around you call it luck, but you know better. It was simply the compounded power of time used wisely. Now consider the stakes. A single wasted hour a day may seem trivial, but an hour a day is 365 hours a year. That's the equivalent of more than 9 full work weeks. Over 10 years, that's 90 work weeks, nearly 2 full years of life. 2 years that could have been invested in growth, in learning, in building wealth, in strengthening character. 2 years thrown away in fragments, all because an hour here and an hour there were allowed to slip by unnoticed. This is why I say wasted time keeps you poor. It robs you silently, not in days, but in hours, until years have vanished and you have nothing to show for them. So what is the solution? Begin by reclaiming your hours. Choose just one that is often wasted and invest it instead. Use it to study, to think, to plan, to practice, to serve. Do it daily, consistently, and watch what happens. In a year, you will be ahead of nearly everyone you know. In 5 years, you will stand out entirely. In 10 years, you will not recognize yourself. That is the law of compounding time. It works quietly, invisibly, relentlessly. And the question is not whether it will work, but whether it will work for you or against you. So let me ask you directly. Are you compounding time in your favor, or are you compounding regret against yourself? Because the years will pass either way. The time will add up whether you use it or waste it. The only difference is what you will have to show when the compounding has done its work. Will it be mastery, wealth, and growth, or will it be regret, poverty, and stagnation? The choice is made not in years, but in hours. And the choice is yours, beginning today. Here's a fact that shocks me every time I think about it. Most people stop learning the day they leave school. They walk out of the classroom, set down the last textbook, and from that moment forward they believe their education is finished. From then on, they coast on whatever knowledge they happen to gather in their youth, as if the world itself were frozen in time. But the world is not frozen. It moves, it grows, it changes every single day. Industries shift, technologies advance, opportunities appear and vanish, and those who stop learning are left behind. They wonder why their lives feel stale, why opportunities pass them by, why others rise while they remain stuck. The answer is simple. They chose to stop learning, and in doing so, they chose to stop growing. And the man who stops growing has already chosen mediocrity. Now let me show you the contrast. The few who become truly successful never close the book on learning. They remain students all their lives. They never assume they know enough. They never allow themselves to grow stale. They cultivate what I call a constructive discontent, the understanding that no matter how much they've learned, there is always more. They treat knowledge as a living stream, flowing endlessly, and they drink from it every day. And because they do, they continue to rise while others remain fixed in place. That is why 2 men can start side by side in the same job with the same opportunity, and 10 years later one is a leader and the other is still treading water. The difference is not talent, not luck, it is the discipline of lifelong study. I can tell you from my own experience how this discipline shapes a life. As a young man in the Great Depression, I had no money for books, no way to afford the luxuries of formal study, but I discovered the library. I discovered that for nothing more than the effort of walking through its doors, I could surround myself with the greatest minds in history, and so I read voraciously, hungrily, endlessly. I read Marcus Aurelius and Emerson. I read biographies of men who had shaped nations and industries. I read thinkers and philosophers, scientists and poets. Those books became my teachers, my mentors, my companions. And what I learned in those years shaped the course of my life far more than any classroom ever could. That is the power of study, available to anyone who will discipline himself to practice it. Now, let's make this practical. If you were to read just 1 good book a month, only 1 in 5 years, you would have read 60. In 10 years, 120. Do you realize what that means? In a decade, you could give yourself the equivalent of a graduate-level education in any subject you choose, and you could do it for the price of your time and attention. 1 hour a day, 1 book a month, 10 years of steady practice, and you would stand so far above the average man that the world would hardly recognize you as the same person. That is the difference lifelong study can make. But let me set the stakes. If you neglect this discipline, you will stagnate. You may keep busy, you may labor faithfully, but without new knowledge, your methods will grow outdated, your skills will become ordinary, your thinking will turn stale. You will find yourself wondering why others seem to pass you by, why the world no longer has a place for you, why opportunities no longer appear. And the reason will be simple. You stopped learning. You stopped feeding your mind, and so your mind stopped feeding you. So let me ask you directly, what are you studying right now? What book lies open on your table? What new idea are you wrestling with? If the answer is none, then you are drifting no matter how hard you work. But if you have committed yourself to lifelong study, if you are feeding your mind each day, then you are already moving upward, already growing beyond the average, already preparing yourself for success. Because wealth and growth do not come to the man who works hardest with his back. They come to the man who disciplines himself, to think, to learn, to grow. That is the discipline of lifelong study. Here's a truth that many never grasp, and because of it they miss the reward of their study. Knowledge that is not applied has no value. A man may fill his shelves with books, underline passages, attend lectures, take notes, nod his head in agreement, and still his life remains exactly the same. Why? Because he mistook the accumulation of knowledge for the practice of wisdom. He collected seed but never planted it. And a barn full of seed, no matter how rich or abundant, produces no harvest until it is sown into the soil. So it is with learning. Unless it is put into action, it lies dormant, and dormant knowledge cannot change a life. Now let's draw a contrast. Picture two salesmen who attend the same training. They sit side by side, they hear the same principles, they write the same notes. The first returns home inspired, but when Monday comes, he slips back into his old habits. He never changes his approach, never practices the new methods, never risks trying something different. 6 months later, he is no better than before, and he wonders why. The second salesman, however, takes one idea from the seminar and puts it into practice the very next day. It feels awkward at first, but he persists. Within weeks he sees improvement. Within months he has doubled his results. Within a year he is a leader in his field. What separated them? Not knowledge. Both had it. The difference was application. One stored the seed, the other planted it. This is why the discipline of application is so critical. Knowledge without action is like wealth buried in the ground. It benefits no one, least of all the one who possesses it. But knowledge applied, even in small amounts, becomes power. It shapes habits, it alters results, it builds confidence. One principle, lived out daily, is worth more than 1,000 theories never tried. One practice, repeated faithfully, can transform character more than all the ideas in the world left unused. So here is the practical step. For every book you read, for every lesson you hear, for every idea you encounter, ask yourself one simple question: how will I use this? Write down a single action you can take, and then do it. Don't move on to the next idea until you have tested the last one in the laboratory of your life. Even the smallest step taken consistently will cement the lesson and create results. Over time, these small applications accumulate into a transformed life. Think of the man who learns the great principle that we become what we think about. If he reads it once, nods his head, and moves on, nothing changes. But if he applies it, if he begins watching his thoughts, replacing fear with faith, deliberately holding a goal before his mind, each day his entire destiny begins to shift. That one principle, applied, carries more weight than a lifetime of untested theories. It is not the abundance of ideas that changes you. It is the practice of one idea until it becomes habit, until it becomes part of who you are. So let me ask you, what do you know right now that you are not using? What principle sits quietly in your mind, waiting for you to put it to work? Don't let knowledge rot on the shelf. Don't let wisdom remain in the book. Plant the seed. Put it into action. Test it. Refine it. Live it. For only then will you discover its power. And only then will your learning bear fruit. This is the second half of the discipline of study, not only to learn but to apply. And the moment you do, you move from being a collector of ideas to a creator of results. You step out of the crowd of those who know and into the rare company of those who live what they know. And that company, though small, is the one where true success is found. Here's a truth that most people overlook, and yet it explains more failure than almost anything else. Most men quit too soon. They begin with enthusiasm, they set their hands to the plow, they labor for a while, and when results do not come as quickly as they hoped, they give up. They walk away, not realizing that success was only a few steps further on. The great tragedy of life is not that people lack talent or that they lack opportunity, but that they lack persistence. They surrender before the harvest appears, and so they never taste the fruit of their labor. Think of the miner in the story who dug for gold. He worked day after day, convinced that riches lay just beneath his feet. But after months of digging, he grew weary. Discouragement whispered that he was wasting his time. So he quit, sold his claim, and walked away. The next man who came along picked up his tools, dug 3 feet further, and struck the vein. The first miner had been on the edge of wealth, but because he quit, he gained nothing. That is the story of countless men. They give up just before success arrives, and then they call themselves unlucky, never seeing that luck had nothing to do with it. Now contrast that with Thomas Edison. He tried thousands of experiments before producing the electric light, thousands. Imagine how many times he must have been tempted to quit, how many times he must have faced failure, disappointment, discouragement. But he persisted. When asked about his failures, he said, "I have not failed. I've simply found 10,000 ways that do not work." That attitude, that persistence, turned him into one of the greatest inventors in history. He discovered what most people never do. Success belongs not to the talented, not to the lucky, but to the stubborn, the ones who simply refuse to quit. Now let me set the stakes for you. If you quit when things get hard, you guarantee failure, that is certain. But if you persist, if you keep moving forward in the face of discouragement, then success is inevitable, because persistence keeps you in the game long enough for the law of cause and effect to work in your favor. Every effort you make is a cause, every result you desire is an effect, and between the two is time. Most people give up during that gap. They plant the seed but walk away before the harvest. But if you persist, if you continue watering and tending, you will reap, because the law never fails. So, what is the discipline of persistence? It is the decision, made in advance, that you will not quit, no matter how long it takes, no matter how many times you stumble, no matter how often you feel like stopping. It is the inner conviction that says, "I will continue until I succeed." Persistence is not a mood. It is not a burst of enthusiasm. It is a habit, built one day at a time by refusing to quit when quitting would be easier. So let me ask you, how many times have you walked away just before the breakthrough? How many times have you allowed discouragement to rob you of the reward that was nearly in your grasp? If you will discipline yourself to persist, to keep moving when others stop, you will soon find yourself among the rare few who succeed. For persistence alone, even without great talent, is enough to carry you across the finish line. And once you taste the power of not quitting, you will never again be fooled into surrender by the temporary setbacks that stop most men in their tracks. Here's something that changes the way you look at every obstacle you've ever faced. Setbacks are not the end of the road, they are part of the road. Every difficulty, every disappointment, every so-called failure carries within it the seed of strength if you will persist long enough to claim it. Most men never learn this. They stumble once or twice, they meet resistance, and they decide it's a sign to quit. They see setbacks as proof that success isn't for them, and so they retreat into safety, into comfort, into the familiar prison of mediocrity. But the rare few who succeed understand something different. Setbacks are not punishments. They are preparation. They are the training ground where character is built, where muscles are strengthened, where wisdom is forged. Think of the oak tree standing tall in the wind. If it were never tested, never bent, never buffeted by storms, its roots would remain shallow, its trunk weak, a mild gust could topple it. But because the winds press against it year after year, its roots dig deeper, its trunk hardens, its branches grow strong enough to withstand the fiercest storm, so it is with you and me. Without resistance, we remain fragile. But with resistance, if we persist, we grow strong enough to hold the success we desire. The winds that others curse are the very winds that make us unshakable. I've seen men ruined in business, stripped of everything, and yet they began again, and because they had endured loss once, they knew how to avoid it the second time. They rebuilt with wisdom, and what they created the second time was stronger, larger, and more enduring than what they lost. I've seen individuals lose jobs, lose positions, lose opportunities, and discover in the ashes a chance to begin anew, often in ways far better than before. These men and women did not allow setbacks to define them. They used them, and in using them they grew stronger. Here is the emblème, truth. Every failure carries a lesson, but only persistence can uncover it. If you give up, the lesson is lost, and the failure remains nothing but pain. But if you persist, if you endure, if you press through the difficulty, the lesson emerges, and with it, strength. The failure becomes feedback. The disappointment becomes wisdom. The setback becomes the very foundation on which future success is built. This is why persistence and resilience are inseparable. One keeps you moving, the other transforms what tried to stop you into fuel for the journey ahead. So let me ask you, how do you see the obstacles in your path? Do you see them as walls meant to keep you out, or as weights meant to make you strong? Do you curse the storms, or do you recognize them as the very winds that are deepening your roots? Your answer will determine your destiny, because success is never the absence of setbacks. Success is the mastery of setbacks. It is the refusal to let difficulty break you, the decision to let it build you instead. And once you grasp this, setbacks lose their power to discourage you. You begin to welcome them, knowing that every challenge you endure is making you into someone more capable, more resilient, more worthy of the success you seek. You stop fearing failure, because you understand that failure is never final, not if you persist. It is simply another step on the road, another lesson in the making, another stone in the foundation of your strength. Here's a truth so simple and yet so powerful that most people miss it entirely. Your environment is nothing more than a mirror of your attitude. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you carry yourself inwardly is reflected back to you outwardly in the circumstances of your life. If you walk into the world with bitterness, with resentment, with gloom, you will find bitterness, resentment, and gloom all around you. If you walk into the world with expectancy, with gratitude, with confidence, you will find doors opening, opportunities appearing, and people eager to help you. The difference is not in the world. The world remains what it island. The difference is in you. Your attitude shapes your destiny. I once told the story of a woman who lived in Florida. She and her husband had moved there for the sunshine, for the beauty, for the slower pace of life. But she was miserable. She complained constantly about the weather, about the people, about the environment. Nothing pleased her. And do you know what she discovered? Florida gave her exactly what she expected: unhappiness. Her environment was simply reflecting the attitude she brought to it. Meanwhile, her husband enjoyed the very same surroundings. He loved the weather, enjoyed the people, and lived with gratitude. Same environment, two different lives. The only difference was attitude. Now think about what that means for you. If you believe the world is against you, that nothing ever works out, that you are destined to struggle, then every event will seem to confirm that belief. But if you believe the world is full of opportunity, that each day holds possibilities, that you are capable of growth, then every event will seem to confirm that too. Attitude acts as a filter. It determines not only what you notice, but how you respond. And over time, those responses shape your entire destiny. This is why attitude is not just a detail, it is the foundation. You can have goals, you can have ideas, you can have persistence, but if your attitude is sour, if it is rooted in fear, doubt, or resentment, then all the rest will be poisoned. On the other hand, if your attitude is rooted in gratitude, in expectancy, in confidence, then all the rest will be strengthened. Attitude is the soil in which every other discipline grows. Good soil produces good harvest. Poor soil produces weeds. So what is the practical step? Begin each day by deliberately choosing your attitude. Don't leave it to chance. Don't let moods or circumstances decide it for you. When you wake up, decide, today I will carry myself with gratitude. Today I will expect good. Today I will meet others with warmth. Today I will treat setbacks as lessons. Today I will choose to believe that life is on my side. And then, as you carry that attitude into the day, watch how your environment begins to change. Watch how people respond differently to you. Watch how opportunities appear where before there seemed to be none. Let me ask you, what attitude have you been carrying into your days? Is it helping you, or is it holding you back? Is it opening doors or closing them? For you cannot escape this law. Your attitude, like a magnet, attracts its own kind. And if you want your destiny to be one of success, of growth, of abundance, then you must begin with a soil of attitude. Cultivate it daily, and life will mirror it back to you with unerring precision. Here's something most people never truly understand. Your attitude doesn't just shape how you see the world, it shapes what the world gives back to you. Expectancy is a powerful force. It is as though your inner outlook sends out a signal, and life responds in kind. If you expect failure, you will unconsciously act in ways that bring it about. If you expect success, you will carry yourself differently, speak differently, make decisions differently, and life will respond with opportunities that match your expectation. Your attitude is not only a reflection of your inner world, it is a magnet that attracts your outer world. Think of the men and women who rise in leadership positions. Often they are not the most skilled, not the most educated, not even the hardest working, but they carry with them an attitude of confidence, of expectancy, of warmth, and people are drawn to it. Others trust them, follow them, respond to them, not because of credentials, but because of attitude. They expect success, and their expectation is contagious. It lifts those around them, and soon it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The world treats them as they treat the world. William James, the great psychologist, once said that the greatest discovery of his generation was that a man can alter his life by altering his attitudes. Think about that. Not by altering his environment first, not by altering his circumstances, but by altering his inner state. The man who chooses to carry himself with expectancy of success, even before success arrives, discovers that success begins to flow toward him. It is not magic, it is not luck. It is simply the law of cause and effect at work in the realm of attitude. Now let's make this practical. If you approach each day expecting trouble, expecting frustration, expecting the worst, you will unconsciously prepare yourself to find it. You will notice every irritation, you will dwell on every setback, you will miss opportunities staring you in the face. But if you rise each morning and deliberately choose to expect success, to expect growth, to expect opportunity, then your eyes open differently. You notice possibilities. You seize chances. You respond with confidence. And soon your results begin to align with your expectation. So here is a challenge for you. Test this principle for 30 days. For one full month, carry yourself as though success is certain. Begin each morning by saying to yourself, today will bring me closer to my goal. Today I will find opportunities. Today I expect good things to happen. And then, watch carefully. You will notice that your environment begins to shift. People respond to you with more warmth. Problems that once discouraged you begin to appear as opportunities. The law is working. Your expectation is drawing its own fulfillment. Let me ask you now, what are you expecting from your life? Are you expecting success, or are you expecting failure? Are you expecting growth or decline? Opportunity or scarcity? Whatever your answer, you are probably right, because life has a way of giving us exactly what we prepare ourselves to receive. And the preparation begins not with circumstances, but with attitude. So expect success. Carry it with you as naturally as the air you breathe. And soon you will find that life mirrors back to you the very success you believed was possible all along. We've walked a long road together, and before we part, I want you to see clearly the picture that has been unfolding all along. The great tragedy of life is that so many men and women mistake hard work alone for the key to success. They labor faithfully, they give their strength, they pour out their days, and yet they remain poor, not because they lacked effort, but because they lacked direction. And the truth we've uncovered is this: wealth does not come from sweat alone. It comes from the union of disciplined effort with thought, with goals, with a wise use of time, with continual learning, with persistence, with attitude, and above all, with service. Those who understand this law rise, while those who ignore it remain trapped in toil. So let us remember what we've learned. Hard work without thought is like a mule pulling endlessly with no progress to show. But hard work directed by imagination becomes leverage, and leverage multiplies effort into wealth. Ideas are the seeds of fortune, invisible, weightless, free to all who think, and one good idea is worth more than a lifetime of sweat. Value and service are the true measures of wealth, for life rewards you not for the hours you give, but for the worth of what you contribute. Goals transform labor into progress, because without them, no amount of effort can move you forward. Time, wisely used, compounds into mastery, while time wasted compounds into regret. Lifelong study feeds the mind and keeps it sharp, but study without application is barren. Persistence keeps you moving when others quit, and setbacks, if endured, turn into strength. And finally, attitude is the silent force that shapes your destiny, for life will always mirror the spirit you bring to it. Now let me leave you with a challenge. Don't let these words remain only pleasant thoughts in your mind. Take one of these principles today, just one, and put it into action at once. Write down a worthy goal. Guard your time from waste. Begin a course of study. Apply an idea you've been holding back. Persist through a difficulty you were ready to abandon. Choose a new attitude to carry into tomorrow. Do one thing today, and then do it again tomorrow, and again the next day, until it becomes a habit. And when it does, your life will begin to change, slowly at first, then steadily, then suddenly, in ways that others will call luck, but you will know it was discipline. And remember this affirmation: you are not paid for effort, you are paid for value. Hard work without thought keeps you poor. But hard work, guided by purpose, multiplied by ideas, disciplined by time, strengthened by persistence, and expressed through service, will make you rich not only in money, but in character, in satisfaction, in the quiet certainty of a life well lived. So begin today. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't hope for luck. Don't ask for ease. Take the principles you've learned, put them to work, and let them guide your life. For the years will pass either way. The only question is what you will have to show for them when they are gone. And if you choose wisely, if you live by these laws, then wealth, growth, and success will not be something you chase. They will be something you attract, something you become. And before we part, let me open a door for you. There is another lesson that builds upon everything we've spoken about today, a principle that explains why small, consistent actions grow into fortunes of wealth, of character, of achievement. It is the power of compound growth, not just of money, but of ideas, of habits, of service. In our next time together, we will explore this principle in depth, and once you see it clearly, you will never look at a single day the same way again. But for now, remember, hard work alone will never make you rich. But hard work, guided by thought, directed by purpose, multiplied by service, will make you rich beyond measure.